It's a really liberating music for a musician. You have like limitless creative freedom, and it's authentic, it's raw, it's real, and it's the weirdest thing created by humans, I guess. Weirdest form of art, at least. I mean, we were young and we were like, famous and making good money, so we were just writing, recording, and playing music. So it was a dream. It's supposed to be the dream.
Welcome to Pop and Politics, your guide to art and culture in Turkey. I'm your host, Kenan Behzat Sharpe. Each week we host an artist, musician, director, writer, actor, or other creative worker in Turkey. And this week we are joined by Can Temiz. Born in Izmir in 1987, in 2005 Temiz and friends formed the band Model. With Temiz writing the songs and playing bass guitar, Model became one of Turkey's top rock bands, with hit songs like Değmesin Ellerimiz and May. In 2016, Temiz moved to Los Angeles. After Model broke up, he spent time playing with bands in the California underground metal and punk scene, performing at famous venues like Whiskey A Go Go. In 2019, he returned to Istanbul and began performing with local death metal and hardcore punk bands like EXNUN, until in 2020 he began releasing music under his own name. Last year, he released his first full-length solo album, AHLAKEN ALÇAK. Combining electronic pop, avant-garde rock, punk, and goth, the album was widely acclaimed by critics. In addition, Temiz is the host of Turkey's most popular podcast, OTarzMı, which he hosts with Can Bonomo, Bengi, Apak, and İsmail Türküsev. Can, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you for, having me here.
Definitely. So I want to ask first about metal music. So I know this genre is really important to you. And it's also been in Turkey for quite a long time, actually. And in the 90s, there was all sorts of controversies about, metalheads in Kadıköy and this whole kind of satanic panic in the press and stuff like that. So I'm curious both what metal means to you and also like its history in Turkey.
Actually, I'm not an expert on its history in Turkey, but of course we all know stories. We watch documentaries, we read books, we read magazines, we watch interviews, read stories. So what it means to me, I always grew on punk and metal since my childhood. My sister is like 10 years older than me, so she was a teenager when I was 4, 5, 6. So she was always listening Nirvana, Metallica in real time. So that's what
as it came out,
so I grew up with those bands, and in high school, I discovered punk, and it changed my whole world. And when you listen to punk, you always want to discover something more, something heavier, something faster, something darker maybe, and it leads you to metal organically. But I was more of a punk guy always. I don't know. Maybe as you mature, you start to seek something more complex, something deeper, and metal is here for you, there for you then. So yeah, it's a really liberating music for a musician. It's meaning for me actually. You have like limitless creative freedom, and it's authentic, it's raw, it's real, and it's the weirdest thing like created by humans, I guess. Weirdest form of art, at least. That's why I love it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a really healthy and powerful way to channel your all the darkness inside, all the frustration inside, all the anger. It's a really healthy way to express it.
And I wanted to ask about your time with Model. So that was a really popular group, and you guys put out several albums and became really popular, and were doing all these tours. And then, of course, the group broke up, and you left. But I'm curious what that period was like, both for you personally, experiencing that kind of fame and success, and then, you know, what the music scene also was like in Turkey back then.
It was really fun. I mean, we were young and we were like, famous and making good money. So, and we were just writing, recording, and playing music. So it was a dream. Supposed to be the dream. It was really fun. But we were all really young, so none of us really knew how to handle it, and it was rough because of it, and it was both internally and externally for us. But yeah, it was a really good way to spend your 20s, I guess. But I really fed up and burned out because, you know, writing, recording, and playing like really similar things over and over for years. As we talk about it, like I want to create on really other different genres like electronic, punk, metal. So I was the progressive music. I was wanting to do a lot of things, but I couldn't because, you know, the model was consuming all my time and energy. Not in a bad way, of course. I'm really proud what we've done. In Model, I still really love the music, but it wasn't enough for me. It wasn't satisfying for me at that point. After a point. So I had to do something else, and, you know, like eternal struggles come to a point there, and we finally broke up, and I immediately wanted to do something else. Like I was like, I was cracking unleashed. Like, I'm gonna do everything. I'm gonna do metal. I'm gonna do electronic. I'm gonna do punk. Like, and in one band in US, we formed a band called 7 Days Sleep. In that band, I had to do everything all at once. Like in one EP, in 6 songs, I wanted to do everything I wanted to do. That was a fun band too. That was fun times too. And so yeah, that was Model for me. It was a really necessary experience for me to become who I am today.
Of course. And what was it like being in Los Angeles after, you know, being here? You go somewhere totally new. Maybe you're not known. You're playing in all these bands.
That was the idea actually. After Model, I wanted to go as far as I can go to somewhere else that no one knows who I am, because I wanted to, you know, find who I am, who I think I am, who I might be. And yeah, Los Angeles is like really good, really cool city. It was really fun to make music there, and, you know, being in the city that, you know, all your heroes was in, all your heroes was born, and all the bands, all the, you know, movements, all the genres was happening there. When you're a child, you didn't know anything about it then, but you were on that city. All of that happened. So it was really exciting for me, and yeah, we formed a band there with a couple of beautiful American musicians, 7 Days Sleep, and it was a really fun band to, you know. It was a fun music to write. It's a fun to play. We played a lot of cool places, like as you said, like Whiskey A Go Go, Viper Room, Rainbow. Actually, they played İstiklal Marşı on Rainbow after we played there. I mean, it was a historical moment for me. Like they played İstiklal Marşı on the bar that Lemmy hanged out.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy.
It was interesting. It was a little victory for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun times. Yeah.
And then after that, you come back to Istanbul, and eventually you start releasing music under your own name. And last year you had your album come out, AHLAKEN ALÇAK, which is a really interesting album. And I wanted to ask both about like the sounds that inspired you and also the ideas and the concepts.
Yeah, after 7 Days Sleep, I decided to maybe I have to
Mentalize.
Yeah, that I had to do that about music. Maybe maybe not put everything together, but maybe a little bit classification. So I formed EXNUN for do really heavier and darker stuff like death metal, grind, and hardcore. And with Can Temiz, actually my first intention was like do it in like singer-songwriter music, like acoustic guitars, maybe little violin here and there, maybe a little percussion, not even drums. And we tried it. We start recording Hayvan Yaralı, my first single, and we started like that actually, maybe a little bit more rockish vibe, and it was cool, but it wasn't exciting, I didn't feel the excitement, so I was listening a lot of that kind of music. I don't know if it does have a name yet. I hope people don't do that and don't name this music because it spoils everything every time you call it a genre. And once you call it something, you can't go back. So there's this music like maybe a little dark electronic, like mixed with pop, punk, metal, and hip hop, horrorcore, like trap. All these genres getting mixed, like artists like Ice Peak, Ghost Main, like Mimi Barks, Wargasm, horror, those kind of stuff. I was listening a lot of that kind of stuff, so I wanted to try that on the first song, maybe a little, the more minimalist approach to it. And I got really excited. I felt really joy, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I don't know where it will go. And yeah, it's eventually went to like the AHLAKEN ALÇAK album. All the singles before that was like a preparation stage maybe for the album. And actually, yeah, there wasn't anything planned. It wasn't a strategical decision. It's how I felt in the studio. And yeah, it became a mixture of like electronic music, pop music, like maybe a little bit arabesque, and Turkish folk music here and there, maybe just a glimpse of it. A lot of punk, maybe not always like the genre, but as an attitude. Punk was always there, metal was always there, screaming was always there. But main thing was always my Turkish emotional songwriting. That was the focus of the project and the album.
And it's both, the lyrics are both political and sort of personal. There's stuff about anxiety. And then there's stuff that's really interesting. Like there's one song that's really powerful where you say, I'm kind of trying to translate it, but you say something like, everybody's armed and they're right from birth and they'll spit at your songs, like spit at your folk songs. Like it's when you walk around the city of Istanbul sometimes, you feel that everybody's violent, everybody thinks they're right. And that part I think is really powerful in the album. That sort of political side.
Thank you so much. And actually when I read your review about the album, it was like, finally, someone really understood me. Thank you for that.
Of course. And then, the last thing I wanted to ask you about, I guess, is just the podcast. Because some people most people know you as a musician, but some people I think just know you from the podcast because
Yeah.
it's super popular. It's gotten all these awards. How did OTarzMı start, and what's it like doing a podcast?
It was Bono's idea, Can Bonomo's idea. He was a radio guy. He started working at a radio station when he was 17, and he had his own show, etc. So he always had a passion for radio. I love radio. I grew up on radio. I was listening to radio late night when I was going to sleep. There were really great radio shows back in the 90s, early 2000s. And of course with internet and social media, like all the good shows died. So one day, like OTarzMı as a concept, it was Bono's idea again, and I guess he tried it with a couple of other people in the past. Someday he came to us and said like, "Do you want to do that on radio?" And we were like, "Radio? Is it still radio?" And we started on like Radio Boğaziçi, the university's radio. And it was so independent, like it was just for fun. And we quickly grew out of it, so we transferred to Rock FM. So there was a radio called Rock FM then, so the good old days. We were there for a season, and I moved to LA. But they kept going, and it really took off when I left. And I came back on the 4th season. So, but again, Bono was listening to podcasts, and he wanted to upload all the episodes to as a podcast. We were like, okay, whatever the podcast is.
It was still new then, right?
Yeah. I had no idea. I was like, is it like radio or something? I said like, I was a really old guy. And in between 4th season and 5th season, podcasts really took off in Turkey in some weird way. I don't know how. I don't know why, but it happened. I think people started to hear the shows, the podcasts. They started to listen to podcasts. And podcasts became popular in Turkey. And of course, we were always like most listened, etc. Because we were the only ones there for a while, like waiting in an empty room to people to come. And when people started to discover podcasts, of course they started to discover us, and yeah, it became really popular. And then a lot of shows start to happen, and we still have a really good, like really hardcore, and I don't want to say fans, because like it's like a community right now for us. They're like friends, they're like family for our listeners. We call chefs, they call us chefs. And yeah, it's we are still doing it for fun, and we started to make money finally out of it sometimes. Not too much, but it's something. But we still do it just for fun. That's the thing we wanted to keep along all these years. Let's make it just for fun. We do a lot of things for money, and we don't have any hobbies. All of our hobbies turns into jobs. So let's keep it as a hobby. Let's make it just for fun. And yeah, we're still having a lot of fun.
That's great. I mean, that's the goal, and that's what I see you doing with your music too. It's just stuff you like, you know?
Yeah.
And that's important.
Exactly.
Well, John, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure talking to you.